morning, everyone. there, the volume's up. Ha, right. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you, the whole of you. My name is Chuck Berry, and I'm the lay leader today. Our Sunday services are as diverse as we are, so if you're visiting our church for the first or second time, please come back several times before drawing any conclusions about us. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of our church activities. If we have any newcomers today or guests with us this morning, you're welcome to introduce yourself. Do we have any takers at this time? I didn't see any first-time people in here today, so we may pass on that today. But we do ask you to join us for coffee hour following the service. And we also want to acknowledge that the land we stand on was taken from the local indigenous people. Inspired by their culture, may we strive to become better stewards of this earth. So it's good to be together, both in person and virtually.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, that's lovely. We won't even have to do that again. That was so lovely. Thank you. I'm Leanne Washington, and I am the lucky human being who is serving as the minister of this beloved community. Our liturgical theme for this month is the gift of heritage. And so we are exploring in a 3-part series what heritage is, that was last week, our Unitarian heritage, that's this week, and 2 weeks from now, our Universalist heritage. Now, because the word God is a trigger word for some people, and because it has in its little 3-letter way encompassed and enveloped so many different ideas. In today's message, I will use the somewhat synonymous phrases ultimate divine being and divine Father instead, hoping that that will make it a little easier for those of you who have what I understand to be, a gut reaction against the word God. I get it. Well, Father, parent, okay? I'll try to make it parent. But what I'm doing is really changing the original sources. And as we spend time together, perhaps we will learn to be less reactive to some of the traditional words within their context. But okay. We will do ultimate divine being, and I will try divine parent. Since I am not trying to convince you of any particular doctrine, you may want to prepare yourself to hear today's message the way I took Christian history in seminary, and that is as though I am an anthropologist and I'm learning about what they think or they believe, okay? And I think that will help us enjoy and learn from our Unitarian ancestors. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our faith as we join with other UU churches and fellowships in this familiar ritual. As we share the light of this chalice in our sanctuary, we also welcome those viewing remotely to light a chalice as well. Our chalice lighting this morning was penned by Elizabeth M. Strong. Our Unitarian heritage bids us light our chalice in the name of freedom, in the light of reason, in actions of tolerance. We gather in community to celebrate a heritage of freedom, reason, and tolerance. And for our opening hymn today, many of our Unitarian ancestors were highly educated, privileged white people who valued highly freedom of the mind and the right to seek knowledge of all types. Some of our Unitarian ancestors were a part of the Transcendentalist movement, which saw divine experience inherent in the everyday. Our opening hymn combines this Unitarian love and respect for knowledge, regardless of its source, with the Transcendentalist sensitivity to our spiritual natures. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are willing and able to, and join in singing our opening hymn, Praise the Source of Faith and Learning, number 158 in the gray hymnal. The words will also appear on the screen.
we invite our youngsters to come forward. Our Time for All Ages story is adapted from the story of Henry Bergh and the First Humane Society in the curriculum Holidays and Holy Days by Charlene Brotman and Barbara Marshfield, used by permission. I like what Chuck did last time. I'm going to sit down here. Have a seat, girls. The pictures will appear on the screen as I tell the story. Now, generally, we try to be in control of our emotions, at least to some extent. We don't want to hurt people because we are angry. But sometimes anger can be a good thing. And Henry Bergh's anger was a good thing. Sometimes it can be a motivational force for doing good. Bergh was a Unitarian who lived in the 1800s. He was also the man who founded the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And it was his anger about the way animals were treated which got him started. He was a rich man who liked wearing silk hats and fancy clothes. He loved the opera, and he traveled a lot in Europe. When he was 50, President Abraham Lincoln asked him to go to Russia as a diplomat, and there he saw a man whipping a horse. He asked a policeman to stop the beating, but the policeman said the man owned the horse, so he could do whatever he wanted with them. And people who saw Bergh trying to interfere, well, they shook their fists at him. They were angry at Bergh for interfering with the relationship between this horse owner and the horse. Now, Bergh remembered that he had also seen people do that in the United States. He'd also seen dog pits where people had taken dogs and made them fight each other. And roosters and pigeons, Society for the Prevention of Cruelty of Animals. And in England, that society, it had the power to stop people from hurting animals. And he thought, wow, what a great idea that is. What if in the United States, here at home in America, we could have an organization like that? That we could have a group of people who care so much about the well-being of animals that they could stop other people from hurting them. So he got together with some other people who thought the same way he did. And he created the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA. And these people worked together to protect animals. Now, not too many people initially were interested in this. It took a while for it to grow in popularity. But one thing that really helped them out, one person who made a big difference to them was an old man who called Bergh in and said, you know, I hear that you've been protecting animals, and I think that's a great thing. And I'm getting really old, and I'm pretty sick right now, and I just don't think I'm going to be around much longer. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you and the ASPCA my money. Well, this man lived in a really humble house, and it was kind of dirty. And Bergh was very appreciative, of course. He was like, thank you very much. I appreciate your believing in us. But he really didn't think he was going to get much money. Not really. Well, it turned out that this lovely, one old dying man was a millionaire. He was a person who had saved his money his whole life and had lived very, very frugally. And so outward appearances were deceiving. And he was so generous, he gave all his money to Berg and the ASPCA. I'll get it right eventually. To protect the animals, you know? So they were able to take that money and buy their own little office building and create an advocacy group and have a greater impact in protecting animals. And then one day, Berg discovered that there was a case of cruelty involving a small girl. He rescued her, and then with other leaders helped start the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And this was the first time that people organized to protect children. By the time Berg died, the meddling his anger had driven him to do had accomplished great things. People wrote poems about him and built monuments to him. The best monuments to him are not statues. They are organizations and volunteers all over the world that protect children and animals, some of which are currently here in this community. So we are very grateful for Henry Berg and his anger. Now, anyone who is visiting who has children, your children are welcome to join the other children in the classes upstairs. Parents, if you have reluctant children that you'd like to take upstairs, you are welcome to take them upstairs and to stay with them as long as necessary. Our classrooms are completely open and inclusive, even of parents. Now let us sing the children out to their classrooms. Thank you all for Yeah, okay. Before we engage in our personal, community, and individual joys and sorrows, I feel it would be remiss not to mention the deep sorrow that I and many of you feel at the recent now war between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I have friends living in Tel Aviv, which is currently being bombed, and I know we have a number of Jewish Unitarian Universalists who may have family members or friends in Israel. And that this is a conflict that has been going on for a long time. There are sympathies on both sides within our congregation. The shame and the sorrow is that we have wars, is that we haven't figured out as human beings how to resolve our differences without resorting to killing each other. And so if Ukraine seemed to be something of the Ukraine war seemed to be something of an existential threat, adding the Palestinian-Israeli war, there is much to be concerned about. And so we will start probably 2 Sundays, having a extra candle in our joys and sorrows every week to light with a prayer for peace for everyone involved. Because whatever the political motivations, whatever the historical injustices, people on both sides are human beings. They have families, and they just want security and to prosper. And so I add my prayer to many prayers that we will find a way to do just that. Support each other to be safe and to prosper.
Good morning. I am Inga Burton-Smith from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It is a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you and all of us can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Chris Hill will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation, supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. This morning, we have a joy from Lindsay Scott. My grandson, Bodie, turns 1 on Tuesday. To Lindsay, we say, we share in your joy. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts, but remain unspoken today. From far and near, please say with me our caring words. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. So we would like to honor that in 2 ways during this service. The first is that our meditation will be held by drumming. And the anthem is intentionally moved to the end of our service. It's the Navajo blessing, and Mary rightly suggested that it would be a perfect benediction for our service today. So, lest you fear, I have once again passed right by the anthem, which is located in your order of service in a different place. I assure you, we will hear the beautiful dulcet tones of our choir, but not until the end of our service. So I invite you now to get comfortable, to close your eyes, find a point of focus, such as our flame, one of our plants, a point on the floor. Let's take 3 deep breaths, and then we're going to listen to a few minutes, 3, I think. Yes, 3 minutes of a drumming and humming sound. Now, the humming sound is a deep, resonant sound, and you are invited, if you would like, to join in that. There are many traditions, the sound, that use these lower tones to sort of resonate with a deeper energy in us. So let's take 3 deep breaths, and then we will clear our minds and listen to the drumming and the humming. In, out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
And what better way to follow up a meditation than a reading by Henry David Thoreau? To live deliberately. Why should we live in such a hurry and waste of life? We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. I wish to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. I wish to learn what life has to teach and not, when I come to die, discover that I have not lived. I do not wish to live what is not life. Living is so dear. Nor do I wish to practice resignation unless it is quite necessary. I wish to live deep and suck out all of the marrow of life. I want to cut a broad swath, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. If it proves to be mean, then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world. Or, if it is sublime, to know it by experience and to be able to give a true account of it.
So, Unitarian Universalists, you have a duo heritage. You have the heritage of Unitarians and the heritage of Universalists. And today we're going to talk about the heritage of Unitarianism. It's an ancient idea that is as old as Christianity itself. Unitarianism asserts that there is only one ultimate divine being, the creator of the universe. Yeah, okay. So, as we get to know each other, and as we get into a rhythm, we may have an opportunity to learn about what's actually in some of the biblical texts and how many gods there actually are running around in the Hebrew scripture. Unitarianism says those personalities, the ones many of us have a gut reaction to and a rejection of their behavior, are just that, personalities. But that there remains an ultimate divine being, essence, source of life. Something that we have difficulty putting words to, but we sometimes, in those precious moments where we feel one with the universe, we're touching and connecting to. And wouldn't you know it, quantum physics is catching up. Just saying. So as good Unitarians, we need to keep our minds open for knowledge wherever it comes from. True knowledge. Knowledge we can reality test based on our experiences and based on outcomes. This notion of there being one ultimate divine being is consistent with some of the teachings in the Christian scriptures. For instance, the Apostle Paul says to the people of Athens, "The ultimate divine being who made the world and everything in it does not live in temples built by human hands, and is not served by human hands as if it needed anything. Rather, the ultimate divine being gives everyone life and breath and everything else, for in it we live and move and have our being." So from this perspective, the ultimate divine being or essence or source or energy or spirit permeates all of creation. It's in the trees, the plants, the oceans, the fish, the insects, the birds, the animals, and in us. With every breath we take, we are infused with the ultimate divine essence, in a form sometimes referred to as the divine spirit. As an aside, this is why, to me, as lovely and moving as it is, the hymn "Spirit of Life" is a little misleading. In the hymn, we ask the Spirit of life to come unto me, as though there is some separation between ourselves and the Spirit of life, which Paul, who I disagree with a lot, and I agree, we don't think that gap exists. Now, that objection aside, I love that hymn. We will sing that hymn. It is a wonderful, wonderful hymn. But the Unitarian notion was that there is some kind of connective, all-inclusive energy in this world. And we should use science and reason to understand it, rather than make up stories to try to explain it, to actually study it, to make sense of it in a way that can be verified either through our actual human experience or through seeing the effects of what happens when we assume that things like atoms exist or molecules exist. Now, Unitarianism is a heresy, which of course is an idea that is not in line with the orthodoxy, the mainline idea or understanding. And in this case, we're talking about the Catholic Church and we're talking about Protestants. So that distinction, that controversy, actually goes back further in history than Catholic Church and Protestants. So I'd like to go back a little bit, step back and take a look at that. So if we go back to the Council of Nicaea, we understand that there was a controversy between a bishop of Alexandria named Arius, who questioned the divinity of Jesus and what was becoming a mainline idea that Jesus was God. God and Jesus were the same. And there are some really complicated, I'm sure we've got some scholars in here who could tell us all about the different complicated theological terms. Well, we don't need to go into that here. I'd be happy to talk to you about it or have a little course, but it's way too complicated to do in 15 or 20 minutes. Here's my simplified understanding. It's fair to say that although Arius agreed that Jesus was the unique son of the divine parent, he denied that Jesus was of one essence, nature, or substance with the divine parent. So Jesus was something else, something different. Arius was not yet at a position where he was going to say that Jesus was just a human being and a prophet. He was sort of conceiving of some in-between status, but it was very offensive to Athanasius and other people who were wanting Jesus to be revered and worshiped as God. So this was initially an academic discussion. Most everyday people weren't aware of it, but then it became a threat. It kind of started a schism in the early Christian church. And the Emperor Constantine, who was trying to conquer and unify the whole world, he desired to unify the Christian church, and he called the Council of Nicaea to determine the nature of Jesus. After much acrimonious debate, the First Council of Nicaea in 325 of the Common Era, that's, 325, a long time ago, they declared the full divinity of Jesus as the divine parent's son and declared Unitarianism, in the form that it was taking at that time, a heresy. In furtherance of their no tolerance policy, the church banished everybody who sided with Arian. You don't believe the way we do, so you are out. You lose your church, you lose your community, and in some cases had to go to another country altogether. That wasn't the end of it, though. This idea that God is God and everything else is not God was a pretty strong and healthy idea. And there were times after Nicaea where the Unitarian notion took prevalence, and then times when it didn't, and there were all these little councils in between, until finally, about 56 years later, at the First Council of Constantinople in 381 of the Common Era, the divinity of the Holy Spirit was established, and Unitarian thought was completely quashed. That's a legal term, quash. Squashed is what lay people often say. So they established the one Godhead in three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and anyone who disagreed with that, well, they were heretics, they were banished, they were imprisoned or burned. Over the years, Unitarian thought has existed in many forms, too numerous to list and explain today, but suffice it to say that despite its having been declared a heresy, Unitarianism in some form has been with us as long as Christianity has been with us. Now, Unitarian thought experienced a resurgence as part of the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century. The Protestant Reformation is generally recognized to have begun in 1517 when Martin Luther, an audacious German monk and university professor, posted his 95 theses on the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg. That was pretty brave for that time. He argued that the Roman Catholic Church's practices around promoting and selling indulgences, that is, pay me money and we will forgive all your sins, pay me more money and we'll forgive sins you haven't even committed yet. Martin Luther saw that as corruption and certainly not in line with the Bible that he was now able to read because the Gutenberg Bible was now in print. That act started the Protestant Reformation. And once the barn door was open, man, a whole herd of horses or cattle or horses and cattle came out, and all kinds of new notions and thoughts about what the Bible was trying to teach us came out. One of the people who read the text and went, wait a minute, this Father, Son, and Holy Spirit thing, I don't see it in here. I don't think that's very helpful. And if you actually do believe that there's some higher force in the world or there's some greater plan, then maybe you're doing some real damage to that by going around teaching everybody a false doctrine about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, I think I'm going to say something about this. And that person was Michael Servetus. He was the most celebrated martyr of the 16th century. His writings included the first systematic description of anti-Trinitarian thought. So, anti-Trinitarian is somewhat synonymous to Unitarian. These are academic terms that have subtle nuances, again, not worth going into this morning. But he wrote this treatise, actually two. He challenged both the Catholic and Protestant churches, both of them, to return to a pre-Nicene purity. He wanted restoration of the way more primitive, basic Christianity was early after let's say, the time of Jesus' life. Now, he's an interesting person. He studied law in France. That's where he started reading the Bible in the original text, the original Hebrew and Greek. And there's just so much stuff that's different in the original than what you read in the English and what has been preached from many pulpits. At about age 20, he published a treatise called On the Errors of the Trinity. And then later in life, he published something called the Dialogues on the Trinity. Both of these books were confiscated, and Servetus was run out of Protestant towns. And then the Supreme Council of the Inquisition in Spain took an interest in him. That was not good. He studied math and medicine in Paris. He became a doctor of medicine. He described pulmonary respiration for the first time. So one of our Unitarian ancestors, who was a doctor of medicine, first described the pulmonary system. Isn't that cool? So he was also pretty tenacious. He wrote secret letters to Calvin, trying to convince Calvin of his way of looking at things or understanding things, and Calvin would have none of it. And ultimately, when Servetus thought that he was going to be able to find some harbor and be able to express opposing opinions in the area that Calvin was responsible for, he got a rude awakening, and Calvin arrested him. He was tried and convicted of anti-Trinitarianism and of opposing child baptism, because he thought baptism was the sort of thing that only adults should be expected to enter into. And he was ultimately burned at the stake. At the same time that that was going on, there was a movement, not exactly the same time, but within this time period, there was a movement in Poland and Transylvania where ministers were leaving their Trinitarian churches and starting Unitarian groups and ultimately Unitarian churches. The first Unitarian congregation, however, was established in 1776 at Essex Chapel in London. It was founded by a former Church of England minister, Theophilus Lindsay. All right, so that's over there in Europe. In the United States, Unitarianism developed independently. And its defining moment was when William Ellery Channing gave a sermon in 1819 titled Unitarian Christianity, which became the key text for liberal religion in North America. In his sermon, he set out the foundation stones for Unitarianism: the unity of the ultimate divine being and the rejection of the Trinity, the importance of reason in understanding the Bible, the importance of human nature in discovering religious truth, the ultimate divine being as having a loving and parental nature, and rejection of the doctrine of original sin. And that is what Unitarianism in the United States, though still Christian, became defined as. And in New England, the congregational churches could pick their ministers, and many picked Unitarians. And Harvard became the seminary for Unitarian ministers. So it's a pretty rich and deep and good heritage here in the United States. Within 20 years, however, the movement was influenced by the transcendentalist ideas of Emerson and Thoreau. And these distinguished American writers emphasized intuition as the source of knowledge and believed that the ultimate divine being is present in every individual and throughout the natural world. So it seems like Emerson and Thoreau and the Apostle Paul are kind of on the same page on this one. Although I'm sure, like me, they have many disagreements. And of course, because Unitarians are open to finding knowledge and truth wherever it may reside, and were curious and real knowledge seekers, they began to embrace the idea that other world religions and world traditions could have some of that truth about who we are and how we should relate to each other and what sustains and supports a life well lived. And so now, Unitarian Universalists have liberal Christians and Jews and Buddhists and humanists and pagans, and even we have a few Muslims. So we now have a congregation of people coming from a variety of different backgrounds. And of course, we have quite a few who come from no previous background, but who resonate with the idea that many traditions have something to help us, to share with us, some truth to give us, some guidance in how to live a full life. Now, I'd like to lift up one of our female ancestors, whose story I just discovered through my participation in the workshop series called Finding Freedom, which is a deeply engaging workshop about how we, as white women, so it was all white women, some ministers, some lay people, all Unitarian Universalists, contribute to racism and racist violence, and how we can participate in getting everyone free, including ourselves. Now, that was a real intense program. It was 5 Wednesday nights. It was 2.5 hours each night, and an hour and a half or so of homework. Lots of deep sharing. For the women in our congregation, I recommend it. It's a good, deep program. And what I have here is the pop-up altar that we were asked to create for ourselves. You can come and look at it after the service. It includes a picture of 2 women, one white and one black, and you'll recognize one, maybe both of them. It includes earth, air, water, and fire. It includes a book I absolutely adore called How Does God Make Things Happen? It will one day be a story we share. It is the, what shall I say? It is the mission or mantra of my life, the answer is. And the answer is through us. We're how the divine, ultimate divine being operates in this world. So anyway, that's my little pop-up altar. And I was surprised that I had not heard of this person before. Her name is Viola Luizo. Does anybody else know of her? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah, all right, so not so many, which kind of surprised me. So for those of you who know about her, please give us grace to tell the story. So many people had heard the call from Reverend King for lovers of justice to come to Selma and join the march. And one who saw and heard that call was a white woman from Detroit, Michigan, Viola Liuzzo. And I might be mispronouncing her last name, but She was in Selma to support the cause of civil rights, and her car was in Selma. She had driven there. So she was giving rides to the old and the weak and to people who didn't have a way to get to the march. So she was shuttling people back and forth to the march. After the march, Viola helped drive supporters to the airport and bus and train stations for their journey home. But she herself did not go home. Home for her was Detroit, but it had been in Pennsylvania, where she was born. So she's a Pennsylvanian before she's a Michigander. She had grown up in modest economic circumstances. Her parents had to move to find work several times. She wondered, in seeing people in all these different circumstances in different places, what the color of a person's skin had to do with whether they were a hard worker or a good student. She was like, that seems a little arbitrary. And when she moved to Michigan, she encountered segregation in a different way than she had when her family lived in the South. She saw that even when there weren't laws separating people, still white people and black people lived in radically different circumstances, almost in different worlds. So she worked for economic justice and the better education. She worked for civil rights with the NAACP alongside her black friends. And when she did not see beliefs and values reflected in the Catholic Church that she attended, when she didn't see priests preaching about the equality of human beings and the rights of all human beings, she left and joined the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Detroit. Now, when she heard Reverend Dr. King's call to Selma, she decided she was going to go. And even though she had 5 children and a husband and a lot of responsibility at home, she thought, I want to go. I want to make my body count. I want to be there. And she did. She crossed the bridge, she marched, and she offered her car in service to those who were also trying to participate. Late one night, Viola and a young African-American man drove some marchers home in Viola's car. Another car filled with men from the Ku Klux Klan pulled up along Viola's car on a lonely stretch of road. The men shot Viola and killed her because she was a white woman trying to help black people claim their civil rights. Viola's murder outraged many people. It followed the murder of Reverend James Reeb and the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, and added to the public pressure on legislators in Washington, D.C. It added to the pressure that led to their passing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Viola Liuzzo is the only white woman honored on the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. A memorial plaque honoring her, Jimmy Lee Jackson, and James Reeb hangs in the national offices of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston, Massachusetts, RUUA. May we be heartened and emboldened by the examples of Michael Servetus and Viola Liuzzo, who lived for what they believed. That's part of our heritage. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are willing and able, and join in singing our responsive hymn, O Young and Fearless Prophet, number 276, which does a good job of expressing the Unitarian view of who and what Jesus was and represents to Christian Unitarians and to many Unitarian Universalists. The words will appear on the screens.
And if you would, please join me in reading our mission statement. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world. One thing I've always loved about UUism is that we usually look for what's common in religions, in other people, not the differences. So, generosity is a spiritual practice, one that enlarges the heart and lightens the spirit, for no matter how much or how little we have in the sharing of it, both the one who gives and the one who receives are blessed. As an independent Unitarian Universalist congregation, we depend on your financial support to pay our staff, to maintain our beautiful campus, and to offer meaningful worship services and religious exploration programs. We appreciate your generosity, and we will be good stewards of your contributions. If you're here with us today in person, collection baskets will be passed, or you can take your offering to the basket in the back. If you're joining us virtually, you can make your offering by mailing a check to the church or by going to the uucnh.org website, finding the link in the upper right-hand corner that says Donate, and making a contribution. If you'd like to make a separate donation for our Share the Plate recipient this month, which is Hearth, and I believe there is the information about Hearth as well, you can do so by placing your donation in one of our blue envelopes. And if you're visiting us for the first time, feel free to let the basket pass. And the morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. as always, Hal, thank you very much. We appreciate your music very much. And please join me in dedicating the offering. You'll see the words on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. And now for the closing hymn, but don't forget we still have an anthem to go as well. We began this service with a story about a man whose anger at the mistreatment of animals and children led him to found 2 organizations for their protection. It is fitting that we conclude this service by singing, "We Are a Gentle, Angry Person," or "Angry People," number 170 in the gray hymnal. The words will appear on the screen, so please rise and body your spirit as you're willing and able, and join us. Extinguish our chalice. We'll remember what we came here for, what our Unitarian heritage reminds us of: freedom, reason, and tolerance, and that we gather here to honor them, and that we will depart remembering them to celebrate a heritage, our heritage, of freedom, reason, and tolerance.
James Luther Adams, one of our great theologians, had this to say about the free church, which is what Unitarians were fighting for: the right to think freely, to investigate freely, to love freely, to be free, especially with regard to our understanding of what makes meaning in our lives. He says, "I call that church free which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence, that sustaining and transforming power not made with human hands. It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority. This covenant is the charter and responsibility and joy of worship in the face of death, as well as life. I call the church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship that protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom, that yearns to belong to the church universal. It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship. It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, on an adventure of the Spirit. The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing. It aims to find unity and diversity under the promptings of the Spirit that bloweth where it listeth and maketh all things new. So, I am happy to announce that many of you remembered to bring a little something for coffee hour. And a number of you very proudly showed me what it was you brought. And I thank you for that, absolutely. I hope this catches on. This year, there's a bill to increase Pennsylvania's minimum wage, which is supported by many UUCNH congregants. And there is a petition, I believe, in Friendship Hall, yes? And there's some postcards. And you are being called into action. So when you go in and you get your coffee and your little something to nosh on and you talk with your friends, look around. I'm not sure because I haven't looked around yet, but I think there's a table. Take yourself to the table. Take a look at what is being offered as an opportunity for you to participate in social justice making. Now, I've moved these announcements to the end, thinking that people might remember them a little better if they hear them on their way out. Also because I just like the flow of it a little bit better. If you feel like you have an announcement that is a call to action for right now, like this one, something you want everyone to do in the fellowship hall, or an event that's coming up in the next week, email me, minister @ and let me know that you have something that you'd like to have highlighted in this portion of the service. Now, we have a really great e-news, so if it's been in the e-news for 3 or 4 weeks, I might not say, okay, I'm going to announce it again from here. But if it hasn't been, if it's something that's immediate, please bring it to my attention and we will include it in the announcements. So, I told you I didn't forget the choir. We have a lovely choir, and I'm very grateful for them, as I know you are. And they are going to come up, and they are going to give us the benediction. So after they bless us with a Navajo blessing by Carrie John Franklin, Hal will provide a postlude for you to quietly enjoy, and then you come out, and Chuck and I will be eager to greet you, to shake your hands, to see you this morning, and to start conversations that will continue in Friendship Hall. Now, were we able to get the lyrics on a slide? We were. Okay, so I will not read them because they will appear on the slide. Mary and choir, please come forward and bless us.